How great would it be to get up close and personal with the beauty industry heroes we love and admire, and to ask them, how did you learn to do what you do? I'm Chris Baran, a hairstylist and educator for 40 plus years, and I'm inviting all our heroes to chat and share the secrets of their success. Well, welcome to this episode of Headcases, and I have to say this: if you're a long hair freak or just curious about long hair, or if you're a creative sort or you're just curious about becoming more creative, then this week's episode is a don't miss for you. Let me give you just some of the accomplishments of this week's guest. Medal of the Order of Australia, almost makes you royalty. International Hair Legend Award for the IHA Awards, winner of the Educator of the Year, AHFA, Australian Hairdressing Federation Awards, winner of the Business Educator of the Year, individual, for AHIA, that's the Australian Hair Industry Awards. She is the two-time inductee Hall of Fame, Hair Expo Australia, and the same award systems gave her, now catch this, 5 times Educator of the Year. That's a feather in anybody's hat. 3 times Educator Business of the Year at Hair Expo in Australia, 2 times Business Performance of the Year Boot Camp, Hair Expo Australia. She is the 7 times finalist for the Hairdresser of the Year at Hair Expo Australia. So let's get into this week's head case. The lady who is the queen of long hair, Sharon Blain. Sharon, it is, first of all, I just got to say welcome to Headcases, and it's absolute pleasure. And if I get a little mumble mouth in here, just because I'm in awe of everything that you've done, and I have to say, just a super pleasure to have you on here.
It's absolutely my pleasure as well, and thank you for inviting me.
I have to, it's interesting because I was just talking to one of your good buddies, Sonia Dove, just the other day. And she said to say hi to you when we do this. So that, first of all, hi.
Sonia's just such a wonderful lady. I have great respect for Sonia and what she does.
And when I was talking with her, she said that she gave me this little hint that you and Candy Shaw and her are like the 3 amigas, that you guys are just of like mind.
We certainly are. I think we're kindred spirits, or sisters from another mother, you might say.
Yeah, it's just that your accent is better, right?
Maybe.
Listen, when I just got finished and I did your intro, and I saw on there that member of the, is it member or medal of the Order of Australia?
Yes, it's the Medal of Order of Australia. I was given that twice a year in Australia. The government actually recognises certain people that have done something great within their career or their industry or their sport or whatever that may be. And apparently it takes about 5 years for someone to actually earn this, and you need to be nominated. So I wasn't even aware that I was nominated by a past staff member, to be honest. I found out later. And he had to gather lots of information for them. He had to also get recommendations from other industry folks as well. And I'm on the Australia Day Honours list. I was given this just a couple of years ago, and it's like the highest order that you could ever get. So my family now are just calling me Dame Sharon, but the Dame isn't there anymore.
Well, so I loved the Dame Sharon comment. I was going to make that myself, as do we have to call that, because it really is it's almost a royalty thing, isn't it? Because that was, for the people that don't know, I think that was recommended by Queen Elizabeth, that they do that in 1975. Yes. Is that correct?
Yes, and I actually have her signature on my diploma, whatever you call it, my letter from her, and I would gather, looking at the dates that it was signed or recommended by her, was exactly that, not long before her passing. So I feel like I was probably one of the last lot of people that maybe was blessed by having her approval.
That's amazing. Absolutely. And I just, I did a little research on this, And for the people that don't know, you said about that people do some extraordinary work, but in there it says demonstrated achievement at a high level. They've made a contribution over and above what might be reasonably expected, and it says whose voluntary contributions to the community stand out from others who've also made a valuable contribution. So it's just the level of that. I mean, the only other people that I think we've had on here, I think we've have had two others from London who've had, and is it called in London? Is it the
Yes.
MBA members of British MBO? Is it MBA?
Remember
MBE? That's what it is.
MBE. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
as long as I don't know if I have to curtsy or bow or anything anytime we're together,
No, I wouldn't
kissing
bother.
the rings, all that kind of things. But listen,
No, look, honestly, it is a phenomenal honor, and I'm blessed to, to obviously be one of the few hairdressers here in Australia. We have a few of them have passed since, but I think there's probably in total over 30 years in total, probably only five
wow.
people. But not necessarily always have they received it for their services to the hair industry. They happen to be hairdressers that received it for their contribution
Yeah.
to other things. Yeah.
Wow. Well, first of all, congratulations. And I just have to say, I mean, well deserved. There's so many people, and what I love about this doing this podcast is, we've never really had a chance to really meet in a formal meeting where we can just say, "Hey, how are you doing?" and just shoot the breeze. So I love it, and I love the fact that I can be on here and just pick brains. And you certainly are well deserved of that honor, as well as all the others. As a matter of fact, if there's anything that I'm going to ever enter into, I'm going to ask you if you're entering, and then just so I don't, because your work is absolutely spectacular.
Thank you. No, at this stage, I don't have any plans to shoot any images, and no, I'm not going to enter into any creative awards this year.
Okay,
So you're
good. Yeah,
safe.
they're good.
Feel free to go
Good, and I'll
ahead.
accept third. I'm all of those are fine with me. I'm just after trophies. Uh, now, I want to do two things with you here. I want to talk about because let's face it, from all what you've done, it takes a certain amount of creativity in it, and obviously, a lot of the awards that you've got are for education. Now, I don't want to make it about the awards because that's not. I mean, yes, it's nice to have, but it's what you do to change people's lives in the education, and those are the areas that I want to kind of time permitting chat about. But I want to jump into creativity first. I was just talking with Lori Zabel the other day, and she was in in one of your classes. I can't remember if it was in LA or one of the areas in San Francisco or somewhere, or New York that you were in. And Lori Zabel, she's literally one, we call her our daughter, but just she happens to have different parents. But she was just raving about your class, and I know I've talked to everybody else that I said it's always about being how super creative you are. So when you hear people talk about how creative you are, how do you feel about that? What's your thoughts on that when people label you in that
Well,
way?
funny, I don't actually ever hear those conversations because people probably have that conversation behind my back. And it's quite weird. I never saw myself as that creative, probably until I was about 50, which
3
sounds
years
rather
ago, yeah.
bizarre. Yes, exactly. And what came about from that was I was going through some old photos of different photographs that we had shot over the years, and they're actually on film or slide. And I was looking at them and I was thinking, wow, these are actually what we're doing now. And yet I was flipping through pictures that were quite
Yeah.
old. And I think, oh, we're doing that now. We're doing that now. Wow, these are actually, I could actually put these up and they would be like they were shot today. And I suppose I never saw myself as being able to think about things maybe before the time. And then another thought sort of came across my mind was that I always thought I was a great copier. So initially, you know, whenever I would do a photo shoot, I would just find these beautiful photos that people had created. I would make my storyboard out and I would try to copy in from every hair as per that photo. And I'm sure a lot of people will recognize this conversation because I'm sure most people have a crack at copying one of their favorites. And I used to think I was doing a really good reproduction of some of my favorite pictures that some of my colleagues had created. And so I always used to say, look, I'm a great copier. I'm not an inspirational hairdresser. But as time walked on, I started to think, yeah, maybe I actually do have more creativity than I give myself credit for. And it wasn't until that age time that I actually started to think, you know, actually you are creating material that, and you're not looking at other people's stuff anymore. You're actually looking at a piece of hair and seeing what you can do with it and making something happen. So I started to give my head a little bit of a chat, like we need to do in hairdressing. And I started to change my mindset about, oh, I'm just a great copier, to actually, yes, I think I could influence hair a little bit more. So I started my own personal growth and journey based on that conversation with myself. So the biggest thing I try to do these days, and whether it's for a class, whether it's for styling for a class, whether it's styling for a collection or whatever it is, I want to now challenge myself to never create anything that I've seen before. So that comes with a little bit of a price tag, as you could imagine, and lots of sleepless nights and a lot of flops. But I feel more than ever now I can just look at a piece of hair for what it is and see what it's going to do and start just working with what's in front of me without having to think that I have to push it this way or that way to recreate a look that I'm probably trying to recreate. So I feel like my styling now is growing a lot than what it has over the years. And it's funny that it's taken me that many. It took me till 50 years of age to realise that. And then I think my best work has been created from then on.
Yeah,
And we had a fabulous seminar just this Monday in Melbourne with two of my dear hair besties, and I was telling them, they were all saying, oh my God, you create so many beautiful images. I said, don't forget, there's a lot of things I haven't won. And I've been a finalist for Australian Hairdresser of the Year on 7 different occasions, and yet I've never won them. And yet, I get to that stage where I'm thinking, oh, it's just because I'm the old girl and they don't want to give it to me anymore. So I probably have to concede defeat and move on, which I obviously have. But I feel like creativity comes for me from so many different aspects. There's been one of the key things that really resonated with me was many years ago, I was fortunate enough to be taken to Germany by Goldwell at the time. And they wanted me to create some iconic images for them for their relaunch of the Colorants campaign. And they gave me images of the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao. And that's where I had to get that's where I had to take my inspiration from. Now, no one's ever thrown me a building and said, you have to create inspiration from a building. And I didn't know what the part of the building was I was supposed to look at. But I tell you what, I wanted to do the best job I could because this was the first time I'd ever been blessed with the opportunity to create images for an international ad campaign. So I didn't know whether it was the outline shape, whether it was the surface, whether it was the reflection of the shine. I wasn't sure what it was. But believe me, I was ready to walk away from the job because the pressure that I was getting to fulfill their desire was really tough. But it led me on this new direction and path of how creativity can evolve. And when I look at those images that I created that many years ago, they're still the most beautiful images. And I honestly think if you look at them, you could probably see the form of the building. You can see the variation of the 3-dimensional shapes within. And that was a great,
Yeah.
great learning for me. And that was very inspirational. And I think the other thing that helped me most with my inspiration was learning floristry.
Learning what?
Floristry. So I went to college to learn how to to do flowers.
Wow.
So I learned to do casket covers and massive big arrangements. I've learned to do bridal bouquets. That taught me the principles of design.
Wow.
And although in college the principles of design may be mentioned or not mentioned, they may be taught or maybe just crossed over. Until I understood the principles of design, I don't think my work was ever that appealing. So now I know what looks good. Now I know how to look at the shape. Now I know that that's too much. You need to take some off and know when to stop. So I think they've been those couple of things within my lifetime that have been really key, that's pivoted my brain to think a little bit more creatively and how to use my brain to create, creative images that we may never have thought about in the past.
Wow. That's absolutely amazing. And it just tells me how you can get something no matter what the course is, no matter what you're taking, it still applies to what we do because it's art. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And, I did flowers really well. And there was a moment in time where I thought, I'm going to leave hairdressing and just take up floristry. And even to this day, I mean, just give me a flower and I'm as happy with a flower as I
Wow.
am with a piece of hair.
That's just a different material,
But,
right?
I think, yeah. And, if people just take their little brain out of just trying to create a
Right.
style and putting pressure on themselves to look outside our industry to other things, it really is quite amazing how the inspiration can freely flow. I mean, I was just trying to think of that fabulous female architect, Zaha Hadid. She died in her late 60s, I think, but she is probably the most iconic architect as a female. And if you look at some of her buildings that she's created, that she's pretty much defined what's impossible that turned out to be possible through her design. And so the thing that I think about with hair and I think about with her is, everything has to come from
Right.
foundation. Everything has to come from foundation. So whether you're trying to create one of her amazing architectural pieces, you know that whatever is on the top, there's a massive
Yeah.
foundation below
Yeah.
to make it
Yeah.
happen. So when it comes to hair, you can't just make the top happen. It's what you put into it at the beginning that will make the top
Right.
evolve. So, how are you going to pin it? What sort of base are you going to use? What texture are you going to use? How you get that quality finish? All of those things to me are really relevant when it comes to creating beautiful images.
Yeah. I love where this is going, and I'm seeing like there's a thread that we just talked about in there where you talked
Yeah.
about copying. Because I'm sure when you took that florist class, you would have had to learn how to copy something first. They had to teach you how. Here, look,
Yes.
you do X, Y, Z, and that will. I can't believe I said being Canadian. I said I'm starting to say Z. I'm getting more American all along. But you have to do it X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z, and then you copy X, Y, Z. And I think
Yes.
that's what we
That's
do in
right.
education too. And I'm wondering, what do you think? Do you think that's why some people don't think that they're creative? Because they go to a class, they watch you do color, design, avant garde, whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
then they copy it, and then they go home and copy it. Do you think that that might be part of why some people don't think that they're creative?
Yes, I think it is. And I think they're not pushing themselves to utilize the skills they've just learnt in that class and to take it on another
Yeah.
track. They're just going to focus on what they've learned, and they think there's no those are boundaries that you can't expand past. But the more I'm educating now, the more I'm saying to people, I am teaching you skills within this hairstyle. And I want you just to learn the skill. Yes, it will end up as a
Yeah.
hairstyle, but it's the skills that created the hairstyle that I'm teaching you that you can take and transfer to create other styles that
Yeah.
don't necessarily look like this one. So trying to open their mind up while you are educating them to other possibilities, that seems to be, resonating with some of the students as well. But I'm sure a lot of people would probably have my mindset. I'm not one that takes a piece of paper. I'm not an artist. I don't draw. I'm not like some of these wonderful hairdressers that can draw fabulous hair. I guess that I just think about it, and I just look at it on the head and I try to sort of push it. And if I push it in this odd shape, I think, oh my God, I love that shape. How
Yeah.
can I hold it there? So then I'm going to work out how to create the base to make it work to hold there. And that's not with a can of hairspray, because I'm an absolute fanatical hairdresser when it comes to no
Yeah.
hairspray.
Yeah. Because that can wreck your style, right? I mean,
Well, that's exactly
yeah.
what I say. You shouldn't depend on a can of hairspray to create your image. It's to create the images. The hairstyle will support, the hairspray will support it in the end. But don't just load it up with hairspray and
Yeah.
pray, because it doesn't work
Yeah,
that
and
way.
I'll bet you part of that comes from just habit, right? They have clients that come in, they do a
Yes.
beautiful head of hair, but they got to go out and say it in the wind and the humidity or whatever. So we spray it with hairspray to hold it in place. But you don't have to do that for a photograph, because there is no, unless you got. And
No.
sometimes even if a wind machine is on it, it's even a little bit better.
Well, I when I'm judging for competitions, and as you can imagine, I judge competitions worldwide pretty much every month. One of the things that's a real turn off for me is seeing it so overdosed on
Yeah,
product, whether it's gel, hairspray, texture sprays. Half of them you can see particles in the hair from too much of
yeah.
something. I think it's a real feat to be able to create beautiful hair styles that looks like the hair is alive and breathing. And it's a challenge I give myself every time, because that's the feeling that I want to see in my hair these
Yeah.
days. I want it to look real and alive.
The one thing that when I look at your work, and this is going to sound wrong, but you have this amazing ability to get every hair in place, but yet it doesn't look like. I watch some people's work, and there's mine included. That's a mastery in order to be able to get a polished look where every hair that's going in a certain direction needs to go there, but it looks effortless. And I think that's where I'm trying to go.
Yeah, look, I don't know if you realize my background was competition hairdressing.
Ah,
And I'm absolutely blessed to have had Anne and Gary Bray as my coach
now I get.
that many
Yeah.
years ago.
Wow. Yeah.
That many years ago. Now, I'm thinking my daughter was 16 when we went to America. She's now 50. So that's how long
Wow.
ago. That's how long ago I was working with Anne and Gary, and I was an absolute avid
Yeah.
competition hairdresser. I just wanted to be a world
Yeah.
champion in styling, classical hairdressing. And I came to Huntsville, Alabama on a few occasions where these guys worked with me. And I was lucky enough to go on and coach Australia and do very, very well for Australia. We won Oceanic region and stuff like that. But what I'm saying, the ability to make hair move and polished and finished, but in an effortless way, definitely comes from my foundation of classical styling that I learned
Yeah.
with those
Yeah.
guys.
I also saw on. I was. I'll call it stalking some of the work that you were doing. I'll call it research, just for the purpose of this. But I noticed on your site that you were talking about your advanced course that you're going to be doing. I believe you're doing it up in Toronto and
Out
in New
in New
York.
York.
And what I
Yeah,
loved, because you and I've forgotten your assistant's name. I apologize, Ailey, and
Ailey.
you were talking about how, and I want everybody to hold on to your seats when I say this, how in your advanced course you're going to be teaching them how to use rollers and set the hair.
Yes,
Good on you.
yes.
Good on you.
Yep.
Because, that's where, I came from my background was, before Sassoons, and I've been in the business for 55 years. So it was before blow dryers and before curling irons, et cetera.
Mm,
So you had to learn how to put rollers. And I don't want, if you're 25 years old right now, I don't want to lose you on this, but that's where you learn how to make one curl C formation fit into another C formation, whether it's the C formation is big or
exactly.
small. You learn how to connect them together, and I
Yes,
applaud
exactly.
you for bringing that back in.
Look, I feel that a lot of the people that I've had in my boot camp over the years, and I've got to say, America has been absolute champions of my education. I feel every time I come to America or Canada, I always get booked out classes. I feel like I could be an American. I'm so welcome, and I feel really appreciated. But last year, when we did 2 back-to-back boot camps, and they were 4-day classes, so I taught people how to blow dry again. I taught them how to tease and pin and do basic
Mhm.
skills that would support any particular look that they were trying to achieve. And I look at these. A lot of people, when you look at their inspirational boards, they'll have a Marilyn Monroe. Look, it was only this morning that one of my friends here who does photography sent me a picture of Madonna with a curly set. And he said, "Would you need a wig for this, or could you do it on this model's hair?" And she had long blonde hair. And I said, "Yeah, I could do it on her hair." But I said, to safeguard you, I'm not sure who's doing the styling on your shoot, I'd go for a wig, because otherwise they'll be there all day and they probably still won't be able to make that happen. But I think it's because when you understand
Yeah.
setting and what you need to do with it, it can evolve into anything. So it doesn't have, rollers is just one
Yep.
tool. That same setting pattern could also be done with a
Look.
barrel
Yep.
tong. If you're clever and you do a really good blow dry with good tension and you allow it to cool down correctly and you choose the right barrel size for the outcome, you can still get that same result as you would get with the roller. Probably not quite as
Yep.
gutsy, but definitely movement that you're looking for. So I think, as we know, the foundation of everything came from setting. So I'm going to have people in my class, they're going to learn to set Marilyn Monroe, John F.
Oh yeah,
Kennedy, Jackie
Jackie Kennedy.
Kennedy, and oh gosh, I've lost the last name, but 3 of our iconic women of those 50s, 60s eras that had sets, right? Because I want them to know how to do that, because these people that will be coming to this advanced boot camp will be hoping one day that they'll be picked up by an agent and someone's going to throw them
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
looks one day and say, "I want you to do that." But how many people can do that? We can do it because we were brought up
Yep.
in that age. And that was what we cut our teeth on. But for the youth of today, it's not something that they've done. But they have these desires and dreams to, at some stage, work on movies or work within the editorial space. If you don't know that, you're not going to get
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
gig. And if you do get the gig and you stuff up, you won't
Yeah.
get any
Yeah. Because
more.
that's a kiss of death. Because they talk to one another
Exactly.
and say, well, don't hire Chris because,
Oh,
you know,
yes. Yeah, he could. Yeah, it took him
yeah,
5 hours to get something,
yeah,
and that everyone ran late, and it was just a disaster. So, I love that I can share that information. I love that I have this full rounded knowledge of this skill set. Then, I just want everybody to have
yeah,
my knowledge, because, I'm not here for a long time now, and for as long as I can be here and share that, I think that's what we have to do as, elders of the industry. We have to give
Yeah.
back to this next generation coming through, and pray that they will pass it
Yeah.
through, because otherwise it just stops with us. I take my knowledge to my grave, and that's not my mindset. I want the best for our industry, and I think the more skills we can pass back on to our, upcoming hairdressers, the greater I feel
Yeah.
about that.
I think we're kindred spirits in that way. I often use this example that my dad, who is a car salesman, he was always about sales, and it was always about, but he was that old school where you were in business for 40 years and then you retired and so on. And so he always talked about two 20-year periods. He said your 20-year periods at the very beginning, when you first get married and you're having your family, that's when you give. You have to give up money for everything. And then he said the second 20 years is when you've got everything you want, but now you're starting to get you get savings, you get your cars, everything's paid for, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And like you just said, and I'll pass this on to you, and you can use it if you want. Is I always say that we're past both of those 20 years, so it's about give for the first 20, get for the second 20, but you have to give back for the 20 after that. And I
Yeah,
think that's where
yeah,
we're in a line.
absolutely.
That's everything that I believe that you're saying, is I'm so ingratiated to, simply because you've got to give back at the end. You can't just sit back on your laurels.
Mm-hmm.
That's that's why you
Yeah,
are who you are.
exactly.
Um, but this is a great segue into education. But I would be remiss if we didn't say, okay, we talked about the creativity. I want to talk about education and all of that, but like I'd like you to get some sensibility about your hair story. Like, tell us, like, how did it all start? Why hair, and how did you get into it?
Oh, it was never not going to be about
Ah,
hair. And I tell this really beautiful story, and I'm trying to recall my age, but look, I wasn't even a teenager at the time. And we lived next door to a beautiful old couple, and they were in their 80s. And the wife was, well, she wasn't bedridden, but she definitely was quite immobile. So she would wash her hair on a Saturday morning. I'm still at school, obviously. Um, Obviously, I'm still at school. And she would wash her hair every Saturday morning, and I would go in and put rollers in her hair and put her under one of those old-fashioned blow, dryer things. And then I would go in and I would brush it out. So I'd go back in about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and I would brush her hair, put a little bit of hairspray on it. And her husband was the most loving, adoring man. He had absolutely adored Mary. And he used to say, "Oh, Mary, you look so beautiful." And I thought, oh my God, if I do hair, that's how people feel when they get, that's the appreciation of me doing her hair. And I guess when you're one of 7 kids and you've got 5 brothers, it's a bit of a hard gig to get any
right.
appreciation from your dad. So my mum obviously was different, but my dad, I'm always looking to him to show some appreciation towards the female in the family. And I have one sister who's slightly older than me, but unfortunately she was born with a lot of health
Oh,
issues. So it was a given that she was going to get dad's attention. So I always felt like I was the one left out. But anyhow, I just felt like, oh my God, this is such an incredible industry where people really love what you do. They appreciate you. And I just loved brushing and doing her hair. And, I used to do my hair myself. So, when I'm going off to high school now, I'm like the naughty kid in the class. To be honest, I didn't want to be there. I did not enjoy school very much. And, I was probably sent out of the classroom more times than I was actually in the classroom. And, I said to my mum, I really hate school. And she said, well, you can't leave school till you get a job. So I said, I just want to be a hairdresser. So, 14 years and 9 months, that's very young to leave school. So I left without any qualifications, obviously. And I got a job at a local hairdressing salon in Bathurst, which is a very small country town in New South Wales, Australia. And I had a horrible boss. He was really quite mean and not nice. But, I stuck it out there, and I was so unhappy working there. Actually, I'm thinking this. Hold on, I'll reverse that back. My first boss was like a witch. She was really horrible. And I got sacked. after 6 months, because I don't know if you recall when we used to have hair spray
Yeah.
in a pump
Yep.
lacquer
Yep.
bottle. Well, I actually made a mistake. I didn't do it on purpose, I promise you that. I put disinfectant into the lacquer spray by mistake because they were both brown. And my boss now sprays the lacquer on her very long haired lady who'd been sitting under the dryer for probably an hour and a half to dry. And now she's got disinfectant in her hair instead of hairspray. So she threw the lacquer spray at me, told me to get my bag and leave. So that was the end of that job. And they could do that in these days, and no one's ever going to, she could have been up for bullying, couldn't she? So I did get a job with another guy, and they were really tough as well. And to be honest, I did. In Australia, we have a 4-year apprenticeship. By the time I finally finished, because of my probably not great behaviour as an employee, I ended up taking 7 years to finish my training. But I never went to any colleges. Everything to this very day that I've ever learned has been self-taught. Because in that country town, there were no hairdressing schools. And if you wanted to try and get a qualification from college, you had to do it through correspondence. And that wasn't ideal for this personality. So, yeah, it took me 7 years. I got married very young. I've got 3 children. I've got 7 grandkids. And I eventually went on to open my own salon in another country town after I got married, purely because I couldn't get a job. How funny is that? So I bought my own salon, and my dad loaned me the money. And, that was huge for my dad because he was a hard worker and he had to take a second mortgage on his house. And he used to say, "Don't you lose my money." And it was $3,000, $3,000, believe it or not. That's what it cost me to buy the salon. So I was very proud to ring him up on the first day and let him know I'd made $85 for the day.
Did you save your first dollar?
And he was as proud as I was that I'd made 85, but I didn't tell him about a few days we made nothing. But I realized very early in the stint that I really needed to be skillful. Yeah. So while we took bank loans out, and each year in the middle of winter, even though I had little babies, my mum would come and stay with me, and I would go to Sassoon's in London and book in for a month.
Good for you.
And I would go back repeatedly and repeatedly and repeatedly. So although I'm recognised as a skillful stylist with dressing hair, I could say that my cutting skills are pretty much up there as well. So, then, of course, once I'm getting the skills for cutting, then I'm growing a really good business. And in this little country town, and there was only about 12,000 people there, I grew to a staff of about, my friend was, one of my apprentices said we had 26 at one stage. It was wild. But I do attribute the success also in that little country town as I took on a half an hour stint on local TV every single week. And they never paid me. I paid them, I think, $50 a week. And I had this gig on the local TV station all about hair and dressing hair and whatever was happening at the time. We might have an ear piercing machine in, so we'd do ear piercing. We might have launched a new hot roller, a new colour, whatever it was. And I did that for 3 consecutive years on local TV. So that grew our business massively. So then we moved to Sydney. I was lucky enough then to be introduced to classical styling by a person who was working in the salon that I joined, and he was the Australian champion in styling for competitions, Norman Ironside. So he and I worked together, and he taught me. Then I came to Sassoon's. I then went on to open my own salons. I ended up with 3. Obviously, I've sold a whole lot of them now, but have employed massive numbers of people, trained X amount of, I can't even imagine how many young folks that I've trained as apprentices. But now I'm pretty much freelance educator. So I'm not an ambassador to any brand. I'm sort of free to work with anybody. But I just love the education. Yeah. So that's a short story about a long story.
Well, and I have to, one quick thing. I was out visiting, one of my good buddies is and I know you know him, is Benny Tognini, and he and I are like brothers.
Oh,
and,
yes.
And I remember, and I don't remember which area it was, but I remember him driving by, and he said, that's one of Sharon's salons right there. Because so even that was back, oh God, I don't know, that had to be at least 15.
So you would have been in Beecroft in Sydney.
Probably, yeah.
And you know what? It was an iconic salon. We were well before our time. I had free childcare in that salon, and we had a purpose-built area, and we employed 2 child carers. So any of the parents had brought their children were able to book their kids into the childcare. And also, what it was there for all the staff members that decided to have babies that would have probably left me. They knew that they could go and have their babies, and when they were ready to come back, they could bring their babies to work, and they would be looked after while they were working with their clients. So I rarely lost a lot of these young mums, where we find these days when someone has a baby, it's never convenient to go back to work in their normal location. They tend to open up maybe a chair at home or something like that. So I was able to keep a lot of these girls coming back to work, which was great, but it had a massive reputation, this particular salon. It was an old supermarket, which took us 7 months just to pull apart and rebuild. It was a beautiful location.
Well, with ideas like that, I can understand why you got the business awards that you've got in there as well. So I think that was a brilliant, because not many people think about that. They're always thinking about, well, what's this going to cost me, and so on. And I think that sometimes you just got to put things out there and just do them, and just shake the world up a bit. So when you said, hey, you don't have to worry about your kids going at home, or you can't come in during the daytime, you got to wait till your husband's home, bring your kids in. That's brilliant stuff.
And a lot of, not only did the staff appreciate it, the clients appreciated the fact that I was being, a very caring boss to the staff. And that makes good all-round energy with everybody.
Yeah, no, agreed. Where did I think people always think that you're gifted being able to teach. And it's not that I disagree. I think you have a personality that can teach, but being able to teach is completely different than knowing the skill and discipline of how to teach and getting a message across is different than doing hair. They're 2 completely different genres. So where did the teaching part of it come from for you?
Do you know, I was a really good retailer in my salon. And I used to think, if I just keep telling the client what she needs, and I continually instruct her on how to create this look tomorrow, I will have a good client base, because they will appreciate the time that I've taken to instruct them. They'll appreciate the time that I've shown them. In some stages, say, take my brush, hold it like this, do it like that. So I've always been very strong about instructing my clients how to recreate their hair. So I obviously had a massive, huge client base. I think the biggest thing with teaching is I don't want to hold back. I think a lot of the problems with education these days is people will only teach you this much because they don't want everybody to know everything. I have this philosophy as like, well, it's taken me this many years to learn this. You're not going to learn it in one day anyhow. So I'll tell you everything, because to be honest, you're only going to pick up X amount of it anyhow and take it away. So I've always been very open and sharing with everything I teach. I honestly, genuinely want people to do the best they can be. I'm not going to walk around the room when I've demonstrated a look and say, oh, that looks fabulous, when it looks absolutely rotten. I'm going to say, do you mind? Give me your comb and let's just work with this, because I really believe we can work and get this better. So I won't allow anyone to just dish up anything that's mediocre in my class. I want them to feel proud and motivated, and walk away feeling that they can recreate what I've taught them. I don't want this situation where you say, oh, that looks amazing, but you need to do this. Just keep practicing. We all know you have to keep practicing, but I want everyone to try and do it as good as what I've done. And that to me is really important. And the appreciation for that approach is significant. The other thing that I've also spent a lot of time is looking at, I realize people, and particularly in our industry, we do attract a few people with, various learning disabilities. I've had it as my own staff members. And I've always tried to work out how we best accommodate people that have various ways of taking on information. So some of them will be visual, where they can watch you and pretty much go and recreate it. Some of them have to take notes. And, some of them have to, listen, take notes, watch, do. There's all different ways to approach it. And so I try to bring in all the different learning styles, unbeknownst to the people watching me. So we'll have a board where we're writing up notes. You'll have me watching, me trying to not just explain a technique, but try to give a side explanation. So it might be something like, I saw a girl called Ashley Norman this week, and I thought, I'm going to take that. She was talking about the cuticle on the hair, and she had 2 pair of jeans there. She had a brand new pair of jeans in one picture, and on the other side, she had jeans that were all shredded. And I thought, how good is that explanation on what a cuticle looks like? Because this is a good head of hair, and this is the hair that the cuticle is all blown out and shredded off. So I try to explain a little bit like that to them, to give them good underpinning knowledge. And it's not just about the hairstyle. It's not about the finished hairstyle. It's about the underpinning knowledge that got to the finished hairstyle. And I spend a lot of time researching that. I mean, even with my book that I wrote through lockdown, I spent hours and hours and hours. I knew what I knew, but I really wanted to make sure that I knew what I wrote in that book was right as well. So I would go down a rabbit hole, seeing what this person says, and that explanation, and trying to give a good, informative lot of information, whether it's texture, whether it's cuticles, whether it's fine hair, thin hair, elasticity, all those things are all relevant for creating a good hairstyle. And I think that's probably why I do well as an educator, because I go into it a little bit more. I'm not as shallow with my education, and it's definitely not about a product sale. And that's one of the things that people really appreciate most from me, is that I'm not standing up there selling a product. I'm selling skills.
I want to just jump back to your book. Is the book that you did in lockdown, is that the one with the blonde on the front that has the zigzag pattern across?
Yes.
Where can they get that?
It's available on Amazon.
And just go to if I typed in and I went Sharon Blain book,
and you typed in Sharon Blain or the Confident Stylist, it would immediately come up, and it's in a system that's called Print on Demand. So when you book it, when you pay for it, they print, and there's a couple of days print time, and then it's sent to you.
This episode is sponsored by the Salon Associate Accelerator from trainersplaybook.com. Are you struggling with the time and cost of associate training? Do you feel like your salon is running you? We'll get your associates on the floor, all with 90% less time from you, so you can get back to building your business. Get them world-class design, finishing, color, and client care skills they'll use every day for the rest of their career, while you focus on realizing your vision. Go to trainersplaybook.com and get the Salon Associate Accelerator. And now, back to the show. So I think you've almost answered this next one, but I want to put this out there because I think it's so important. We've been talking about education, and there's so many people that look at you, they see your style, and I think when people see that authenticity and they want to emulate that, say, I would love to do what Sharon does. So if there was a young kid that was out there and said, I want to be like Sharon and I want to be an educator, what were either 2 or 3 things or whatever that you would say to them that they could work at to become that educator that you are?
Well, I think the most important thing is to be incredibly knowledgeable about your subject. You can't be everything to every person. So I never wanted to go down the cutting route because, to be completely honest, it was very competitive. So if I decided to be a cutting educator in Australia, I'm going to be up against
Yep.
Benny and all those other people at that time of my life. But I seriously knew no one was able to style quite the way I do. Now, currently, as we know, there's a lot of people who class themselves as stylists on Instagram, but they're stylists that only do probably 3 or 4 things well. And it's a trend that a lot of them are doing. It's the waves, it's the ponytail, it's the messy bun on the nape and the messy bun on the top. And I don't think there's anything else there. There might be a couple of braids mixed up with that. That isn't, to me, a stylist. That's a person creating images for social media that is trying to get numbers. When you want to be an educator, your skill set has to be surpassing that type of work. You have to have. I'm just blessed that I've been doing it so long that it isn't a hard gig for me because I grew up in this. But when you're a young kid wanting to teach like Sharon Blain, and I get so many beautiful young students in my class that I know that at some stage, with their drive and determination, will be there and get there. They know intuitively that they need to know more than what they currently know. And they're not learning it in college, as we know. They're only touching on any sort of styling for a very short amount of hours. So I feel that I would start with just learning to put a roller in. And if anyone's ever looked at Nicolas Jean-Jacques, do you know Nicolas
No, I'm
Jean-Jacques?
afraid I don't.
Well, you need to. I did a podcast with Nicolas in lockdown. He's a French editorial stylist, and I most identify with him. I think he's quite phenomenal. And I asked him how he started, and he said that he was assisting for many years. So that was one thing, how he got into the editorial arena. And one day someone didn't show up, so he got the gig. But he realised there were certain looks at that stage of his career that beauty editors were looking for, or directors were looking for in the photographs. So he would focus on one look, and he would practice and practice and practice till it was utter perfection. And only then would he say, I know how to do this, and move on to the next one. So he researched what was current out there, what people were doing, and not necessarily your Instagram doing, but more looking at your editorial stylists, whether it be, Eugene, whether it's Sam McKnight, a lot of these wonderful people that do beautiful work, and trying to get an idea of how they might have created that. I mean, we just looked at that runway show Chanel did in Edinburgh. Did you notice that one that's just come through?
I haven't seen that one yet. What?
And they've set hair, and it's a short, wavy set. And it's absolutely significant. It's so beautiful. It reminded me of probably a little more freer, but when Dior in the 60s with the new look, when that came through, that beautiful wave setting and all of that, it just melted my heart. But it's a skill. You can't just do that. You've got to know how to do it. And the bones of that come from the basic things like setting. So you focus on your setting. You focus on doing really beautiful braiding. You focus on smoothing hair and getting good quality polish. And you focus on creating beautiful shape and create your skill set so strong that when you stand in front of someone, if they question you, you've got an answer for that. If they, and you will stand there and not mess up. I mean, no one's going to tolerate someone presenting that doesn't get a great result. So even for me, when I'm going to do a class, I'm going to spend a week practicing before I even show up, even at this stage, because I want to know that I've got every step down pat. I want to know where every hair has to go. So I'm a bit like a machine. I know exactly where it's all going to happen and how it's going to happen. So you can't just go in and pray. You've got to be absolutely polished to perfection before you can get there. And I think you've also got to have a good, I think one of the things I would highly recommend is if you could have a great mentor.
Yes.
Someone who's a really great mentor that you admire, that's doing some incredible work out there. And even if you look at some of the celebrity stylists that are doing some of the, iconic stylists, approaching people and say, I know it's not easy in America to hop on a plane and go and hand up bobby pins, but if you can do that, that's half the battle. If you can get onto someone's team at Fashion Week, you're probably not going to do hair, but you might hand up bobby pins. But the more you can be within the clique, the more you can be exposed to everything, the better your skill set will evolve and the stronger you'll be. And that's not. And to be a recognized educator, I really think it takes years. It really didn't happen for me overnight. There's no doubt about that.
It's interesting how this conversation has went, because we almost ended up back at the beginning again. Because here's what I heard you said. Because if you want to be to the caliber that Sharon Blain is at, you've got to know all the skill sets. It can't be just trend and what's the flavor of the month. You have to be able to practice so that you can polish that skill and you're there ahead of time and you're not wasting people's time. And the other thing is you have to put in your time preparing for the events that you do. And I loved what you said about that you got to do the research. And I know that in doing research that we've done, like when we've done them for some major production shows and doing things for the finales or the in-between pieces that we've done is I remember working with our team, and 85% of the time, if you're creating something, 85% of the time is on research on the screw-ups that don't work, so you can do it right each and every time after that. But so people give up in the research. And what I love that you said is you put in the time in the research so that you are Sharon Blain, who can do that look each and every time to perfection when you're on set. Whereas if you didn't do it, that's where you might stuff it up. And I think that's just absolutely brilliant. And part of that comes from copying. Part of that comes from having like Anne and Gary that mentors of yours that taught you what you do. I just think that this whole conversation has married the creativity we talked about at the beginning with the discipline that takes of education. So absolutely.
And Pivot Point have a fabulous textbook, and it's a very, very old textbook. And I do have the list of it. It's the styling component of that book that I think goes back 40 years. It's a very old textbook. I think it's design, the art of design or something like that. And it's all about putting rollers in. All right. It's everything about how you set to get to a result. And that's like my Bible. And even if I'm not sure I want to move the hair in a certain way, I'll pick up that book today still and just see how they've actually set it. And it's not for me to it's not because I want to put a roller in, but I might want to blow dry it or tong it. But I know when I do it that way, I will get the result, because that was one thing that Leo Passage, I believe, was synonymously clever with, was his design principles of the setting. So I always identify setting and styling with Leo Passage, and definitely the cutting component with Vidal. And they're my two people that I most, accredit to my skill set. And not them personally, but what they've created and what I've followed and created my philosophies around.
I think a lot of those people set the ethos for what we do. They're like, it's a similar for me. Like everything when I was a kid, everything when Sassoon started off, I just went, that's what I wanted to do. And quite frankly, it's because I almost got sacked from my first job because I was working at a salon. This is when everything was shampoo and sets. And I would people wanted monstrosities. They wanted volume, and the higher the hair, the higher the heaven. And because I was I wanted to be a cutter, I went into and all the shapes when they were walking out the door, you could see them sort of like the air was leaving out of them, and they would collapse because I didn't know the principles of setting, and I didn't know how to back home the hair properly. And it's funny how that went full circle for me because, like you, I got then hooked on competition, and everything that I learned in competition made me the hairdresser that I am today. But I see that
Yes.
all of that's there. Like kids nowadays that is, and I say it like I talk like the old man that's out there now. But if they understand that everything is still about an on, off, and half based setting, whatever tool you're doing, or
Placement.
placements,
Yep.
or everything you do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, Sharon, we're at kind of our rapid fire segment in here. So I'll just throw some stuff out at you, and just quick one word answers, couple words, whatever. So here we go. We might have covered a little bit of this in what we've done already, but let's just work with it. What turns you on? What turns you on in the creative process?
I think the design from the beginning, creating the design and coming up with the inspiration.
Love it. And what stifles creativity for you?
My brain being too busy with other stuff. So having too many other things to deal with, I can't seem to clear the fog to get into the good
Love
stuff.
it. And in life, what are the things that, in life in general, what are the things that you love most?
Definitely family first, all the way.
And what do you dislike the most in life?
Probably people with egos that can't support it with
There you
skill.
go. A thing that you love about our industry. What do you love most about our industry?
I love the youth. I love their searching for wanting to be better. I really believe, I know a lot of people have different opinions about this. So the youth of today in the industry are lazy and this and that. Anyone that I've had the privilege of meeting have been absolutely like a breath of fresh air, and they're just like little sponges. So I'm lucky enough to meet the best of the
I love it.
bunch in my classes.
And in our industry, what do you dislike the most?
I dislike the fact that people feel that we're a lesser sort of industry. It really upsets me no end to think that if you're skillless, if you're a dropout from school, you can be a hairdresser. That's very sad because I believe we are not given the credibility that we deserve. But I think we drive that a little bit as well by not having the confidence to demand and realize we're worth more.
I couldn't agree 100% more with that. The person that you admire the most?
Oh, gosh, so many. I think you, Jane, at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant person. Your most prized possession?
Oh, my God. God, I don't know. I've got so many. Maybe my partner and my little dog.
I love it. What kind of dog?
I've got Clive. He's a cavoodle.
A what?
Cavoodle.
No, I know what the doodle part is. What's the cover part?
So it's a King Charles Cavalier.
Oh no!
Yeah, Clive, come here.
Oh my! I've got to see him.
Come here.
I mean, I've heard of so many with cross mixes with different poodles, but I've never. Oh.
That's Clive.
Oh, love it! I love it.
Huh?
I love it. And then a person that you wish you could meet.
Oh, gosh, you should have told me about these before. I feel like I've met a lot of great people. I do identify a lot with some of the celebrities. I do like that Anne Hathaway.
Oh, yeah.
I think she's a little bit of an interesting soul. I'd like to meet her.
That would be awesome. I'll arrange it because Anne Hathaway and I are like
Thank
this.
you.
But this is me. This is
really?
me. Okay, let's see. Something that people don't know about you.
I love cooking and I love entertaining for heaps of people.
Love it.
So nothing gives me more pleasure than to cook a whole pile of food, throw it on the table, and invite a mass of people over. And I also love gardening, so I do love digging in the
Yeah,
dirt.
and you can use your own veggies for cooking with. A month
Yes,
off. Where would you go, and what would you do?
a month off. Oh, I still want to do
Nope,
hair.
I can't do hair. You just got to take some time off. Or
Oh,
where would you go?
okay.
What would you do?
I think. Oh, I think probably back to Santorini
Oh, I love it there.
in Greece.
Something
Yeah,
that what
that's where I want to
is
try.
something that terrifies you.
H.
Okay. Favorite curse word.
A curse. What was
Favorite
that?
curse word. Baga.
Bugger.
Do you remember that?
That's
Do you
Australian.
remember that ads that they had on that? I think, and at the
Yes.
end, somebody would always go
Put the
baga,
shrimp on the
baga.
barbie.
I love those. Those were
Yeah.
great. Favorite comfort food.
Oh, well, I do love a cup of tea and a biscuit.
Okay, something in the industry that you haven't done. Now, I don't know what that would be. Something in the industry that you haven't done, but you'd still want to.
I would like to work at the opera company.
Ooh.
I would love to take some hours at the opera company working
Oh,
on
that would be
wigs.
amazing. I'll
It's probably the only thing that I
I
haven't
will
done.
pass pins. I'll fly out and I'll pass pins to you on that one. One do-over. If you could have a do-over in career, in life, in
Who could
whatever,
we
what
do it
would you
on?
do?
Oh, for me to do something
Yeah.
over again? Oh, I think, oh gosh. I'd probably be happy to sit in a class at Sassoon's
Oh,
again
yeah.
with Tracy, but she's not there anymore. Oh, well, I'll go with
Yeah.
Mark.
Mark's amazing.
I'll sit
Yeah.
with Mark. Yeah.
Okay. Tomorrow you couldn't do hair. What would you do?
Flowers.
Flowers. We saw that one coming. And just now, before I've got one last question for you here before we start to sign off. But what if people want to get a hold of you, want to do a class with you, want to book in some of the classes that are coming up for you? Where should they go to find that out?
Sharon Blain Education on Instagram, and just click the links. You can get straight through for any of the products, classes, books, any information at all. You'll get there. But pretty much our Instagram page is probably the most. We post a few times a day on that,
Beautiful.
so pretty much everything about me is there.
All right. So, last question. One wish that you had for our industry, what would it be?
To have everybody charging an absolute bomb for their services, to have a very, very skillful, confident, competent individuals that are out there doing hair, for all of them to feel their worth.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I'm all for that as well. So, Sharon, I don't know where time goes, but this seems like this just flew by in a flash. And I just can't thank you enough. You've given up your time. It's got to be, 9 or 10 in the morning tomorrow for us.
Yeah, it's not too bad. It's not too
Yeah, but I
bad.
want to thank you for giving up your time and sharing your knowledge with us. And that was just absolutely a pleasure to have you on here.
And thank you so much for having me. I love doing this, and I was absolutely, thrilled when I opened the email and asked if I would do this. I thought, oh wow, I would love that. So thank you for thinking of me. I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunities that I'm afforded through podcasts and the other opportunities that I've had in my career, and I just feel pretty proud that still at this age and stage that people still want to have a chat to me. So thank
I
you.
want to do this again because I've got this brainwave where I want to have you and Candy and Sonia on at the same time and talk
Oh my
about
God!
stuff. And I think that would be a great one. I'm really looking forward to that.
Do you think we'll be able to get a
Well,
word
I
in?
won't. I can sit back with a glass of wine and just watch you guys go at it. So,
Well, you better make sure we don't have a glass of wine, because that's when it'll all
then
happen.
I'm going to insist that
I've
you're
seen it
drinking wine when
before.
this all happens. So, listen, I just want to say thank you.
I would
Just
love
say
that.
thank you
Thank
again.
you.
It won't be the last time we chat.
Thank you. I really appreciate
Thank you. And
that.
listen, for those of you watching and listening right now, if you could do us a big favor, if you loved what you're hearing and seeing, and you want to go to your favorite um, areas that you go to listen or watch this, and you just want to give us a good rating on there, that we'd really love it, so that we can get out to more people. So Sharon, one more time, love it, and thank you so much. It's absolutely a pleasure talking to you.
Absolutely my pleasure as well. Thank you.